What happens when an atheist is in such a dire need of a miracle that they turn to God and God actually comes through? Well, in this video, you're going to see just that. You're going to see how Sal DiStefano went from a full-blown atheist to now a full-blown believer in Jesus Christ. And you're going to see how God transformed his life as he gave his life to Christ. And you're going to see and hear and witness a miracle watching this entire video. So stick till the end. As always, like the video, subscribe, and let's get into this.
Becoming a real Christian really only happened about 7 months ago. But up until then, this was a struggle. Yeah.
That's really recent.
Yeah, this was
what changed?
Man, I've been searching for a long time. I was an atheist, hardcore. Like, I would have debated anybody. You sat me down and debate.
This is crazy. Okay, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
Why did you identify like that? Why did that start before we get into the God thing?
Yeah. So a real atheist is actually closer to God than somebody who doesn't think about this stuff. Because a real atheist is looking.
Yeah.
You know, like most people don't even think about it. They don't really look, right? If you ask them, they'll give you an answer, but they're not really like, for whatever reason, I was always searching. Like, what's the answer? What started all this? So as a young man, I was an atheist because the world evidence to me was like, oh, there's no magic. It's all science and what's in front of your face. It's the physical world. So I was always searching. So that's how it started. And then I eventually became agnostic because, make a long story short, I realized how arrogant I was. Like, I'm pretty damn arrogant to say there is no God, absolutely. So I'm probably more agnostic. Like, I just don't know. I just don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
And then about 7 years ago, we interviewed Bishop Barron. He's a Catholic bishop. And I found him because he's really, really smart, and he'll debate and communicate anything openly. And I watched him. There was a clip. Jordan Peterson kind of opened me up to the wisdom of religion, because at that point I thought religion was just stupid and whatever. And, Jordan Peterson's done this very well. He's like, actually, there's a lot of wisdom, and it's what built society. And
That's very true. Honestly, I can say the same. Jordan Peterson has been foundational for my walk and relationship with God, and just seeing the wisdom that's found in the Bible. I mean, especially recently, Jordan Peterson has gotten really good at teaching the scriptures and teaching from the biblical stories and biblical examples of so many different things, because there's so much wisdom and so much life advice that you can glean from the Bible. But the Bible's not just a book of history and wisdom and life advice. The Bible is where you find salvation. The Bible is what tells you about Jesus and tells you that if you give your life to him, you can be forgiven. You can be washed clean from all of your sins.
And civilizations. So it opened me up to the wisdom, but I don't believe in the esoteric or supernatural part. I just said, oh, there's wisdom here. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I saw Bishop Barron do a video on Jordan Peterson, and I liked him. And I said, boy, this would be cool in my podcast to interview him, ask him these questions. So we went down to Santa Barbara at the time. That's where he was located. And that interview was real questions for me. And now at the time, I know what was happening. But at the time, although I didn't realize what was happening, I was being pulled. I could feel it. I feel like, this is weird, man. I feel like I'm being pulled in this direction.
7 years ago.
Yeah, like I'm meeting these Christians, and they're just such good people, and I just feel like I'm really being pulled in this direction. Like,
hey man, if you're a Christian watching this right now, you need to understand something. You need to understand that a lot of the people around you, your friends, coworkers, family, that aren't saved, they might not read the Bible, but they're definitely reading you. They're definitely reading you and the fruit that comes off of your life, your attitudes, and the example of Jesus that you bring. And know that you're not going to be perfect, but you can do your best to be a light to everybody around you. Because a lot of people are going to be like Sal, where they're going to say, man, I probably wouldn't read the Bible right now because I'm not just there yet, but I see all these people that are Christians, and they're such good people. They're so kind. They're so smart. They're so giving. They're so generous. Maybe because I see how much fruit is coming off of these people's lives, I should see what's causing that fruit. And that's where you give them your testimony. That's where you invite them to church. That's where you tell them to read the word. All that stuff comes from there.
So anyway, for 7 years, kind of just continuing to search, continue to dabble, meet Arthur Brooks, good friend of mine now. He's a professor at Harvard, and He's Catholic, but very smart scientist. Met him, and that pulled me closer because he's very intelligent, so he could discuss things at that level. Kept pulling me. Went through some struggles, personal struggles with my marriage, and I just kept kind of moving in that direction. But I never really took the leap of like faith, like God is real, Jesus was real, He did this for us. Never did that, and then I had a crazy experience. Wild, bro. So up until the story I'm about to tell you, I'm teetering, but I haven't really taken the full like belief, right? I have a daughter that is going to be 2 soon. She's a year and a half right now, a little over a year and a half. At the time, so she was just turning a year. My wife had noticed some maybe developmental issues with her movement and stuff. Nothing major, like nobody could tell, but moms are very intuitive. So she's like, I think something might be up with the baby. I'm going to take her to the doctors. Took her to the doctor. Doctor's like, I don't know. Let's have her see a neurologist. She took my daughter to a neurologist. The neurologist did an assessment and said, I think she's fine. However, she might have something called spinal tethering. And that's where the spine attaches really low on the sacrum. And what happens is as the baby grows, the spine will stretch and then they'll lose function of their lower half of the body. Oh, so if that's the case, we can see it through an MRI. If we do identify it through an MRI, oftentimes we can surgically repair it and there's not an issue. So then we can fix it. However, your 1-year-old's going to have to get an MRI if you want to know for sure. Well, to do an MRI for a 1-year-old can't sit. You ever have an MRI? You're in the machine.
Yeah, you sit there.
You have to sit still with this machine.
Lay there.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, 1-year-old's not going to do that. So what do? They put him under general anesthesia. And I'm like, I don't want to put my 1-year-old under general anesthesia. Yeah. It's not good for their brain. But then on the flip side, if there is spinal tethering, I want to know so we can maybe fix it. So I'm like torn. Like, what do I do? The neurologist is like, I don't think so, but maybe. Like, do I do this MRI? Do I not? So I'm stressed out. I'm like, I don't want to put my daughter under. God forbid she's got a, spinal tethering though. So I, for the first time in my life, was praying out loud. I've never done that before. So I'm driving to the pediatrician's office and I'm praying out loud. And the way I'm praying is like this. I'm like, God, I don't know if you're real. I want to believe you're real, but I don't know if you're real. I need you to show me in obvious ways. Like,
hey, I mean, honestly, that's not the worst thing that you can pray, especially if you're an atheist, especially if you don't believe in God right now. If you just were quiet for a day, doesn't even have to be a day, like 10, 20 minutes. If you were just quiet, you just sat down and asked God for him to speak to you in whatever way he finds best. It could be through a dream. It could be through a person. It could be through a video like this. It could be through a thought that you get, anything like that. If you just would ask God to show himself to you and reveal himself to you in a unique way, in a way that you can't explain away, honest to God, he will come through.
So we get to the pediatrician's office and there was a mix up on the schedule. Oh, we don't have you on the schedule. So it's like argument back and forth at the front desk. Then they're finally like, you know what? We'll get you back in 3 hours from now. We can squeeze you in. So I'm pissed off. I'm like, fine, we'll come back. So then I go to the studio because I'm like, we're supposed to record a podcast. So I'm driving to my studio, and my studio is in downtown San Jose. And there was a parking lot that was next to our studio. And downtown, sometimes you see homeless people or whatever. So as I'm pulling into the parking lot, there's a homeless dude building a fire in the middle of the parking lot. Okay, so like he's got a mattress next to him. His buddy's passed out on some drug. Who knows what he's on?
Yeah.
And he's literally building a fire in the middle of the parking lot.
Sounds very California.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And
yeah, totally. That is so California right there. Honestly, if he didn't say anything else from there, I would have assumed that was in California.
He didn't look. This was like, think of homeless. Now think of the craziest homeless person you ever seen. That's what he looked like, right? Crazy hair, like markings and tattoos up and down his face, right? And he's like building a fire, and looks like he's like into the fire, right? So I pull in the parking lot on the far end, and I look at my rearview mirror, and I see this dude building a fire. And I remembered a story from my friend Arthur Brooks, who I told you about. Yeah. Arthur Brooks, he talked about, I think it was on my podcast, If you ever want to give money to a homeless person, one of the best things you could do is ask them for something in return so that they feel like they're doing something for it. And then, of course, the question is, what the hell do you ask a homeless person for? He said, ask them to pray for you. So if you give a homeless person $5, you give them the money and say, hey, can you please pray for me? And what it does is it makes them feel like they're doing something for you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was profound when I heard it.
Yeah,
first
crazy.
time. Right? Like,
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. I really like that.
Heard that.
right, it makes sense. So I look in the rearview mirror. Remember, I'm praying out loud on the way there, on the way to the pediatrician, on the way to the work. And I look in my rearview mirror and I'm like, maybe I'll ask this guy to pray for me, right? But I'm looking in the rearview mirror and this dude's he's building a fire. Dude is passed out on a mattress. I'm like, hell no, this guy's gonna give me hepatitis. I can ask him nothing, bro. I'm not asking this guy shit, right? So I just walk away. Like, I don't even walk past him. I'm walking away from him, okay? So I'm like, I'm not gonna ask this guy for anything. So I'm walking away. And then I hear, excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Turn around. It's a fucking homeless dude. So I'm like, so I walk up to him. I said, what's up? And he goes, have a nice day. So I said, you know what? I said, can you do something for me? I didn't give him money or anything. I just asked him. I said, can you do something for me? He says, sure. I said, can you pray for me? And he says, yeah, I could pray for you. He said, what's going on? I said, I said, we're taking my daughter to the pediatrician today to get looked at. And then he interrupts me and he goes, is it her spine?
Shut the fuck up.
I swear to God.
Shut up.
Listen, I swear to God.
Hey, man, God comes through. God comes through when you ask him stuff like that, and he did in this situation.
Oh,
Listen to me, I swear to God.
no, bro.
I swear on everything. I mean, it's hard not to get choked up talking about it. It's true. So I said, yeah. I said, actually, maybe. I said, we're going to get an MRI. We need to see if she has something called spinal tethering or whatever. And he says, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you. And I said, so after that conversation, I had money in my wallet and I thought maybe I'll give him some money, but I didn't give him any money. I said, is there anything I can do for you? And he said, no. He goes, you've done more for me than society's done in a long time. Thanks for talking to me. Here's a second punch I felt, because the day before that, I had just started reading scripture, which I'd never done before. And one of the first things I read was a story about Jesus and how he said the line, what you do to the least of you, you do to me. In other words, how you treat the worst in society, you're doing that to me.
Wow.
I remembered that right there, because the guy said, you did more for me than society's done in a long time. So I must have looked like a ghost. I walked in the studio, I sat down in my chair, and my partners are looking at me. They could obviously tell something happened. Sal, what's the matter? What's wrong? And I can't talk. I'm afraid of opening my mouth. So finally I start talking and I start to tear up, and I'm tears are coming down. I tell him, that was God, man. He goes, I don't know what that means. But that was definitely obvious. I asked for obvious. He sent me something obvious.
Yep,
So
100%.
we recorded a podcast after I gathered myself, and I'm on my way to the pediatrician's office. I'm praying out loud again. God, I know that was you. I saw that. I said, but I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Does that mean we do the MRI? Does that mean we don't? I don't know what that means. So I get to the pediatrician. Now, mind you, one of the challenges we have was that my daughter, she's one, she's shy. When we go to the doctor, she's grabbing onto my wife and buries her head and doesn't want to come off. And if we peel her off to get weighed or checked, she cries.
Yeah.
So I'm already like, how is she going to do this test? My daughter's going to cry the whole time. She's not going to want to do anything, because the test involved picking this up, climb over here, reach for this. Can you say this? Can you do that? Right? I'm like, what's going to happen? Bro, I get there. We bring my daughter in there, and all of a sudden my daughter becomes a performer. Everything the pediatrician asked, it was like,
Bro, what the
she's climbing, she's reaching, she's laughing, she's interacting for the whole thing. Pediatrician looked at us. She goes, for sure, she's fine. You don't need to do a test. And that was it, man. I was like, that's it. I'm a Christian, 100%.
Man, that is such a good testimony. I'm so happy that I was able to watch that with you. And if you enjoyed this video, obviously like this video, subscribe to this channel. We post content like this all the time. And share this with a friend. Share this with a friend who's maybe going through a similar situation. They're believing God for a miracle, or maybe they're an atheist right now and they need to pray that same prayer that Sal did, where they ask God to reveal himself to them in a unique way, in a way that they can't explain away. Anyways, I really appreciate you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.